feel like I should do a pretty large dive now on the issue of Venezuela and Colombia, because the biggest thing we have learned, and the biggest sort of tell now that this administration isn't sure what it's doing is legal, is the decision to repatriate 2 survivors from one of these bombings to their home countries. That is the single biggest development of the weekend. Before that, the resignation, the decision by the head of Southern Command to resign, is another big development. And look, he has not said why he resigned. But I will tell you what Jim Stavridis, who also was former head of Southern Command, also former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, what he told me on my Newsfear show last week. If he were in a similar situation and he weren't sure whether an order was legal, and he truly had questions about it and worried, because remember, if you end up executing an illegal order, you will be held accountable in our law. So this is not, it didn't work at Nuremberg, right? This is not, hey, I just followed an illegal order. Well, if you're concerned it's an illegal order, your job is to bring that up. And then if you're still being ordered to do it, basically the honorable thing to do is to resign. And so this is a case where we're putting two and two together, and we think we're getting 4 here. But to me, you had that resignation, and then you had this repatriation announcement. This is the tell. This administration knows it's on unsteady legal ground. So here's what we do know, and I'm sure you haven't been paying. Unfortunately, this story is not getting the type of attention that I think it would get if this were happening in the Middle East, if this were happening in Asia, if this were happening in the Mediterranean Sea. But it's happening in the Western Hemisphere, and for some reason, when shit happens in the Western Hemisphere, we don't prioritize it either in news coverage. We don't prioritize it politically. Neither party does. We've not had a president do it. And in fact, we now have a president who I think is about to make some of the same mistakes, grave historical mistakes that have happened in the past on Latin America. So let me get started. So here's the pattern. The United States keeps sinking boats in the Caribbean, and they keep trying to call it something other than war, right? It's not a war, but it's not a law enforcement action. They've now carried out 7 military strikes on suspected drug smuggling vessels off the coast of Venezuela. The latest strike has left 3 people dead, and there were 2 survivors captured. And they have been this is the 2 survivors that were repatriated to their home countries. One is Colombian, and one was Ecuadorian. So why did they do this? Well, that last decision to send them home rather than bring them into U.S. custody, right? Why aren't we boarding these boats and seizing this stuff, right? Why are we just deciding to destroy it? Well, it's the most revealing clue yet about what's really going on here. So here's what officials said on the repatriation decision. Officials said that this was a humanitarian gesture. But to legal experts, repatriation looks like something else entirely. It is a way to avoid tough questions about the legal status of these survivors. Are they criminals? Are they enemy combatants? Remember, we went through this during 9/11 and Gitmo. Some of this language is going to sound familiar to those of you that remember all of those decisions about people. How were they picked up, these terrorists, these Al-Qaeda folks? Anyway, so criminals, enemy combatants, are they victims? Because the answer matters a ton. It determines what laws end up applying. Do our laws apply? Do maritime laws apply? Do military courts have the upper hand here? If they're treated as combatants, then the U.S. is admitting it's an armed conflict. If they're treated as criminals, then they have rights to due process, to counsel, to trial. That pesky Constitution suddenly is in the way, right? By sending them back to their home countries, the administration doesn't have to choose. It avoids putting anyone in U.S. custody, and therefore avoids the legal test case that could force a court to decide whether America is now at war with Venezuela in the Caribbean. I'll tell you this. This is, at some point, this is going to end up in our courts anyway. You will have perhaps the families of victims claim, hey, they were fishing. They weren't part of this. Maybe they were simply a worker on one of these boats. Maybe they were hired hands. They weren't necessarily part of whatever the narco business that we claim we know what's happening was a part of. And it's likely they will try to they're gonna look for some sort of they'll probably be looking for some sort of monetary justice. And it could very well happen in our courts. So we're trying to do this repatriation to avoid that. That's with survivors. What about with those that didn't survive? Just saying, this is a legal quagmire that is coming. I promise you. So the administration, Pete Hegseth, has been pretty blunt. Here's what he said on the Sunday shows this week. The United States military will treat these organizations like the terrorists they are. They will be hunted and killed just like Al-Qaeda. So he is claiming these are terrorist organizations. Now, to truly be a terrorist organization, the basic definition means you're using, let's say you're a narco-terrorist, that means you're using your drug money to essentially fund this sort of political uprising. What political uprising is being funded here? This may be simply a criminal enterprise, but I digress. Here's another thing Hegseth admitted, though, on Sunday. We've sunk 7 boats. We've seized 19 tons of coke. No fentanyl yet, but that's next. Whoa, buddy. What? This whole thing is supposed to be about fentanyl. You haven't gotten any fentanyl yet? There's a reason for that. Fentanyl ain't a part of Venezuela's drug trade, but I'm going to get to that. But no fentanyl yet. It totally undercuts the entire public rationale of what Trump and Rubio have been saying about why this is legal and about why it should be done the way they're doing it. The fentanyl crisis, which we do have one, has nothing to do with Venezuela or Colombia. It has everything to do with Mexico and China. But that's not where we're focused here. So none of these strikes, they at least are admitting it. You got to give Hegseth credit, have actually stopped the flow of fentanyl because they haven't found any fentanyl. That's not where it is. It's Chinese ingredients being manufactured in Mexico. We've known this forever. It ain't Venezuela. This is an obsession to get rid of Maduro. Frankly, it's a worthy obsession. I empathize with it. He's illegally in office. He lost an election, a small d Democratic election. The lack, frankly, that of international community of coming down harder on Venezuela over Maduro essentially not abiding by the elections has been extraordinarily disappointing. Why this, if this is you could argue, you could make this the rationale. I don't know if a lot of people would love it, because I do think one of the reasons Trump has been able to build MAGA and his base is by at least rhetorically claiming that America first means we're not going to get involved in other people's business. And in this case, Venezuela would be other people's business. But the defense secretary admitted they've yet to seize any fentanyl here. So your essentially bullshit rationale for this is going to come home to roost. There's a reason results matter more than promises. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan has become America's largest injury law firm. For the last 35 years, they've recovered $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. It includes cases where insurance companies offered next to nothing, short of shortchanging, seeing if they could get away with it. And Morgan & Morgan fought back, and they won millions. In Pennsylvania, one client was awarded $26 million. It was a staggering 40 times the amount that the insurance company originally offered. That offer, $650,000, whatever it took to sort of get away without paying. So with more than 1,000 lawyers across the country, Morgan & Morgan knows how to deliver for everyday people. So if you're injured, you're looking for a lawyer, check out forthepeople.com/ToddCast or dial pound law, pound 529 on your cell phone. And remember, all law firms are not the same. So give Morgan & Morgan a look. Their fee is free unless they win.